Well, today the East Coast tour continues, and I'm lucky enough to have Amos Shelley from the McCulloch House, artist and filmmaker. Yeah. So thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. We were coming in, so I always tell the story how we find our way to different places. So we were coming in today, and Jim Lang, I don't know, Jim Lang's a famous sports commentator. He hosts a bunch of shows with us on TPL Media. And he called and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Pictou." And he said, "Oh my goodness." He said, "I love it," because Jim is from Nova Scotia. Okay. And he was just going off about the number of beautiful things to see in the city and the town. And I thought, oh, that's great. And as we rolled in, you know, the rolling hills. Yeah. Yeah. So you're originally an Ontario guy.
I am.
Yeah. Who transplanted here.
Yes.
Yeah. And I can see why.
Yeah, yeah, a one-way ticket.
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you're never going back.
I don't think there's a good reason to go back, sir. No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
All right. So tell me about where we're sitting today, because I read a little bit, last night to get ready for the show. Yeah. The McCulloch House, I thought it was really interesting from an educational perspective.
Very much.
So kind of, if you don't mind, set the frame of, what was happening here when Thomas came. And how his life was, because I can only imagine what his life was at that time.
Yeah, so McCulloch is a very interesting player. I would argue maybe one of the most undersung Canadian icons, I think. Not very many people know a lot about him, unfortunately, because he's a very pivotal person in our history. So Pictou, the landing of the Hector in 1773 was a very small port town, timber spot.
Right, and that was the vessel, the ship that came, right?
So it wasn't the first, but the area hadn't really been settled, and there's a long history there with grants and land grants, and obviously the Mi'kmaq were here for thousands of years, but the Hector arrives with kind of the first wave of Scottish settlers, and it's hard living.
Right,
yeah.
Well, then they spent, from what I read last night, they were like 11 months to get here. 11 weeks.
Yeah,
11 weeks on the ocean.
Yeah,
to get over here. Several of them died.
Yes, mostly children. Yeah.
No bathrooms.
Not really, no, sir.
No, they were just like, of course, in those days, right? They just, they were pretty hard living.
Yeah, so without with a long history, it's really hard to talk about Nova Scotian history and settlement without understanding Scottish kind of history and settlement and displacement.
Right.
So after the Jacobite rebellions and the Battle of Culloden and kind of the land reclaiming in kind of the Highlands with the lords and lairds and the English coming up, there's tension between the Lowlanders and the Highlanders in Scotland. And so the Hector people were kind of the first fruits canary in the coal mine to leave kind of Scotland. Seeing what was happening in Scotland, they left on their own volition, on their own. Eventually it would happen that Scots were rounded up and kind of forced to leave in the clearances that would come later on. So there's a lot of political tension, economic tension in the actual prehistory of Pictou. And so that the people that landed, they crossed on this ship, the Hector, that never should have crossed the ocean. They hit a hurricane. It was a horrible, terrible journey. Dysentery and, starvation. Children died. It was awful, and they landed far later in the season than they're supposed to.
Oh, okay.
And so the Mi'kmaq really helped them survive that first winter. About half of them stayed here, half of them went to Truro. And Pictou, over the next some years, Pictou is just kind of almost like an idea than it was really a settlement. And it took some time before the first timber-framed house was established and the land was cleared sufficiently. Actually, one of my favorite facts about Pictou is before there was a timber frame home, the Copeland brothers came and built a boat. So they were building ships here before they were building houses, which is crazy.
Wow.
So it's kind of in the bones of the town, in the DNA of the town, to be industrious and hardworking. And so kind of late 1700s, 1790-ish, somewhere in there, Edward Mortimer comes from Keith, Scotland, Banff, Scotland, the Morayshire area. And he was a merchant, and he's very savvy, very smart, very hardworking, and he brought a lot of industry to town, mainly through timber trading, back to England, and so back to Scotland. And they're also kind of this Northwest Company, fur trading kind of voyageurs. There's all this kind of mixing of just settling, or trying to settle the land in a way. And it's kind of a tangly history, obviously, with Acadians and Mi'kmaq. But the people that landed in Pictou were mostly poor Scots and displaced Scots themselves. It's displaced Highlanders. And so early 1800s, 1803, Thomas McCulloch was on a ship bound for Prince Edward Island. He was a Presbyterian minister, and he was taking a call. He had a young family. He was a young man. He was taking a call to go to PEI, and bad weather blew him into port here. And the legend goes, people saw that he had a globe in his hand, and so some people convinced him to stay because they knew he was educated. Oh. And he was a lowland Scot, so he wasn't a Highlander. And so whoever was on the dock that day saw that he was educated and wanted him to stay here in town. So he was never actually supposed to be here. And he did, he stayed. And a fierce, sharp, clever, intelligent, very impassioned, progressive man. And so by 1806, they built Sherbrooke Cottage for him, which is the house we're in now, and that was his home.
Wow.
Recently, we just had kind of a historical archaeologist kind of come through and explain kind of the details of the home, that actually for the time it was quite large. So it's really kind of scaled up.
It is.
For a small Scottish cottage, it's quite elaborate, quite large. The scale is much larger, the hallways are wider, the rooms are bigger than they normally would be. And I think it's because they probably really wanted Thomas to stay. So I think it was that kind of, for a Presbyterian minister, it's quite a grand house for his station. But he was a very sharp point of the spear. And he valued education, and he valued non-sectarian education. So he valued basically everybody could be educated. He didn't care your affiliation, your denominational affiliation, where you went to church or where you were baptized. He wanted to educate you with a strong liberal arts education. And no one was really doing that at the time. And so he took people into this home, and at one time there's 27 people living here. And he eventually built like a back room off the back to house students. I think up to 9 or 12 at a time. He had no servants, so it was just him, his family, his wife, I believe his mother, and they ran the home. And eventually they built a barn school in the back of the property to house the students. And because he had this progressive lens of education, he was kind of a lightning rod, and some local people didn't agree with what he was doing, and they burned that school to the ground.
Oh.
It didn't stop him.
Right.
And so he kept pushing and made friends with Edward Mortimer, who is now a very wealthy merchant. And between the two of them, and some others obviously, but mostly them, with Mortimer's financial backing and McCulloch's kind of brilliance, they founded Pictou Academy in 1816. Okay. 1816, which I would argue was kind of Canada's first modern high school.
Oh, wow.
So without McCulloch, I'm not sure education would look the way that it does today. So he fought really, really, really hard and had a lot of adversity coming his way to make that happen.
So the first real, let's call it public school where anyone could go.
Yeah.
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 Right.
I mean, with limitations,
yeah.
They, as early as 1840, they started educating women as well. So we're talking like a really kind of a progressive edge. So it's not perfect. So it would be wrong to categorize it as like he had this egalitarian view of education. He didn't. But in terms of the time, well advanced to where education was in the rest of the empire. And so he fought the bishop and the crown, and he fought tooth and nail with local magistrates to really push for this non-sectarian education. And so yeah, I think you could argue that in terms of a modern lens of being welcoming as the first front, that everyone has an opportunity to be educated, yes, I think you would be right to say. Right. He kind of set the mold for that.
And the settlers coming were plenty at that time through Pictou, right?
Many. So by
from
that,
different places, like any ship that arrived was coming from usually just somewhere else, right?
A lot of Scots. A lot of Scots. So mostly Scots. Some Irish, some English, mostly Scots. So our town, Pictou, has been branded the birthplace of New Scotland.
Yes.
Some people take objection to that, but This, like, very much so. Like, this was the gateway to the Cape Breton Highlands, all around this area, kind of the North Shore. Very, very, very Scottish. I've heard it said it's more Scottish than Scotland. So a lot of Scots, and particularly a lot of Highlanders. So poor, displaced. So by the time McCulloch starts Pictou Academy, it's mostly, at that point, displaced Scots, poor Scots. Like, you could almost argue predatory immigration in a way. Like, they're being forced out of Scotland, and they're being put on ships, and they're landing here to start a new life. And I'm not sure they had a lot of choice in their journey.
Yeah, it's interesting, Amos. I told you the story of sort of my grandmother and my grandfather, who died very early once arriving in Canada. It was the same thing, right? Quite a bit later, but quite frankly, because of famine and just what was going on in Scotland, they left and arrived here, and their family started here and actually made their way to Ontario.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And then her husband died.
Yes.
And three husbands died.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. So along the way, so they kept getting different diseases and had heart attacks, and unfortunately just had And
so hard.
Yeah. Well, she actually, and I used to joke with her because, as I mentioned, growing up, I spent a lot of time with her. I used to grocery shop with her. I used to go see her. I spent time. She really brought us up when my mom was busy, and quite frankly, she ended up having 5 husbands in her lifetime before she passed. But she couldn't. There's nothing she could do about it. Those were the times, right?
No, hard times. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, and she farmed. She did everything when she came in. She cleaned houses. She farmed. She ended up living in the city in Toronto, again as a cleaner. Worked in a sock factory.
Wow.
Yeah, so whatever she could do to make ends meet. But she lived a good life in the end. Like she amassed some money and took care of herself and took care of her kids. She had 5 kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. But
and she was Scottish.
She was Scottish.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Stalwart, hardworking people.
Yeah, they are.
Sure. Yes.
They are. So McCulloch sets the tone.
Yeah.
People are coming from Scotland.
Yeah.
What are they doing? So when they're getting here, I'm curious. So this is where I was trying to figure out last night. They arrive. First of all, where would they have been living? They'd be building their own. They'd be building their own homes, right? As a community, they'd be almost. First Nations group do that now. Yeah. I find it's interesting because as First Nations are starting to amass some wealth, they're building their own communities over time. Yeah. They were doing the same thing, right? They were actually coming here and starting to settle. They were all communally through church and through groups, helping each other build out.
Yeah, a little bit of everything, actually. A lot didn't stay. It was a springboard.
Right.
So it was a landing spot, and like your grandmother, they just kept going.
Yes.
So the genealogy center that we have here, like I've met people from all around North America, California. We've met people from New Zealand, Manitoba, BC, because they're tracing back their roots to here.
Oh, okay.
Because their great-great-great-great-grandparents landed here, and then they left. So a lot stayed, a lot left, kept migrating. Timber, farming, fishing wasn't so much commercial back then, but lots of shipbuilding. So if you were a shipbuilder or like working with your hands, there's plenty of employment here for you in the mid 1800s. So at one point, the legend goes, you could walk across the harbor and not get wet feet because there's so many tall ships in the harbor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Pictou built that 1 year 44 in just 1 year alone in the mid 1800s, which is a crazy amount of ships.
And that was because of the benefactor to McCulloch, and his name escapes me. Mortimer. So he was the one who had the shipbuilding skill set or the shipbuilding entrepreneurialism.
I think Mortimer brought attention and probably wealth and prosperity to Pictou.
Okay.
Other people brought the shipbuilding. He wasn't necessarily a shipbuilder, but the pines, the trees, the geography just led to it. Okay. The times, the wars. So we have in that time you have you're just kind of right after around the American Revolution. You have the War of 1812, the Napoleonic Wars in Europe. So there's lots of need for ships and shipbuilding, and then immigration. So lots of port trading back and forth, like the very, very, very busy harbors. all along kind of the Nova Scotian coast and the St. Lawrence Inlet. So lots of need for ships, and Pictou there's probably a dozen or more wharfs on the harbor front, just shipbuilding.
Wow.
Just all kinds. So, large, small, early 1800s. The Harriet was built here by William Loudon. It was the largest ship in Nova Scotia at the time. It was a beautiful three-mast ship. So it's just all kinds of ships built here. So I think it employed a lot of people.
Right.
And then you have just a whole another side, prospecting, coal mining, eventually the railway. It's like just any kind of industrious, as the rest of the world went, so did kind of Pictou. So a little bit of everything, and where they stayed, where they lived. There's downtown wharfs, waterfronts, houses, inns. The waterfront has changed dramatically over the decades.
Well, I was going to ask you, right now, so because I'm new to Pictou.
Yep.
What am I seeing now compared to what is happening in the city?
Unfortunately, I think you're seeing a small little bit of leftover of what was.
Yeah.
So if you go to Halifax and you kind of walk up that, I think it's like 3 kilometer boardwalk along the harbor.
Yeah, we just did.
Okay.
So we were there doing the explosion of the harbor.
Yes.
The great explosion we did with Zimmel, who wrote the book.
Yeah.
He was a great guy.
Yeah.
And
So that harbor kind of jets in and out because of all these wharfs that they've kind of retrofit along the boardwalk.
Right.
And so it's like jagged kind of Jenga almost looking a structure. Pictou would have resembled that. So there would have been berthing docks, probably 24 berthing docks along the harbor.
Okay.
With all these kind of inlets and like houses built on the wharfs, like fishing huts on the wharfs.
Right.
So it looks very different now than it would have back in McCulloch's time, and then even into the mid 1800s, because eventually they just kind of filled that in. And I love our downtown waterfront. I think it's choice, but it's not what it was. And the part of me wishes it were, because I think it would have been really, really interesting to see kind of all those different, it would have been so unique to see what it was like back then. But there's still so you go to the old stone house, downtown Pictou, Tabitha's leather shop is there, that it's early 1800s. That building would have been built, our maps would show, it was almost on the water. So just below it at grade would have been water and the wharf. So her building would be very close to where the water would have come. Yeah. And now we've filled it all in, but it would have looked very different back then. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned sort of New Scotland, right? Yeah. So is it still heavily Scottish? Like when you meet people, when you go around today, or is it changing?
It depends where you are in Nova Scotia, I think. Yeah.
So, well, here.
Yes, very much, very much. So in the North Shore is very, very, very Scottish. So, and the Scottish arts and culture is very prominent. I am Scottish, so it's like a returning home for me. And so my daughter Highland dances, my kids are learning Gaelic. My son is a Highland drummer.
Oh, nice.
So, and that's just kind of normal here. So it's just a normal way of life here. So it's very, Tartan Festival we just had, Cayleys, which are like Scottish parties. They happen all the time. It's very Scottish on the North Shore. The rest of Nova Scotia, there's different pockets, but here, yes, very much.
Well, it's interesting because so we were doing multiple tours on the East Coast. So this is our second one. We're probably going to do 3 this summer. Okay. We go back and forth and we do between 12 and 14 podcasts each trip. Yep. And we hit Halifax last time, and we were absolutely envious, let's call it, how happy people were. Yeah. I do see it. When I hit Halifax, I do see, a happier kind of a different way of life.
Yes.
Right? And I think they've cultivated it by figuring out, their cultural base. Yeah. And that's important, Yeah. And so tell me what you're doing here, because the McCulloch house is a project, right? I think when I walked in right away, one of my businesses is a development business. So when I walk in somewhere, I say, okay, wow, they're recreating this, and you can see it, right? As you come in, like your art and your filmmaking is telling a story of what did happen. So what do what's your project now here?
So yeah, we just finished an escape room on a story from Pictou, from McCulloch's time actually. McCulloch would have known the protagonist of this, kind of the main character of this escape room, which is really fun, uncovering this kind of mystery to Pictou for 220 years and putting it into like this interactive gaming experience. That's been really satisfying to do. And I'm also working on the second chapter of a stop animation on the history of Pictou. So I have done the first one. It was released coming on about a year ago now. Early history of Pictou, and now I'm working on the second chapter, 1830 to Confederation, with paper in a light box. Just trying to tell the story that's invitational to non-historians, I guess, like people that aren't necessarily keen for history, but it would, kind of the art style, kind of the whimsy of it would invite people in to know their story locally. But the story of Pictou, as we've discussed, is, I think, international. I think Pictou punches way above its weight in terms of what it has done historically, what it offers today as a town. Its reach, reverberations are decades and all around our country, and in Pictou's fingerprints are all over, I would argue, our democracy, our charters, which is just a testament to the people that were here. And that kind of, as a Scot, I'm not ashamed to say, that stalwart, hardworking, endlessly persevering kind of attitude that really valued education, valued equality, and they have been kind of fighting for a long time to preserve their way of life, and it's just kind of in the bones of who they are, and it's still in the bones of our town today. So I feel like I'm just one now of many that is doing the exact same thing of preserving a way of life, and it's really beautiful. So that movie is supposed to just kind of just encourage folks to be really proud of their history. So
and you say up to Confederation.
Yes.
So, and coming up to Confederation, Pictou was, just help me out too, because I'm trying to, in my mind, trying to gauge, coming to Confederation, basically, it was changing into...
Pictou was like, as I understand it, as I would say, it's a town of kind of tension and waves, like massive waves of growth and influence and kind of lulls, as any place, but never a death. So it never has petered out. It's always had this really strong resurgence of meaning. And so in the early 1800s, it was this major timber shipping spot, and then it lulls a little bit, and then it becomes a major shipbuilding spot. And then post-Confederation, it's still an immigration hub, but it maybe lulls a little bit. But then the Great Wars, put it back on the map in terms of shipbuilding again. So the amount of ships that our tiny harbor built was incredible for the size of town that we were. And so the Great Wars, 1 and 2, Pictou had a big influence, and then it kind of, lulls a little again. And I think it's now back up on kind of a renaissance of sorts. So present day. So
well, that's amazing. And we have we mentioned we're going to see the ship.
The Hector.
We're going to see the Hector, and then we actually also have another great podcast coming up too.
Awesome.
So we're excited about it, and part of that is actually understanding kind of the tools people used. And being a builder, just going over and taking a look at what they were driving, what they were using to build those ships. So that's kind of
unbelievable.
It's
unbelievable. So you're at the right time, because they're doing it probably right now today. They are retrofitting the Hector again to set sail again, and they're using historical methods as much as possible. And it is unbelievable what people used to do and what they used to build with what they had. It's unbelievable.
Well, now with all our Milwaukee tools and everything, what I mean? It's hard to imagine.
Though we were in there a week ago, my family was here visiting, and we were, they had like a DeWalt or something, And we made a little glib comment, and he's like, if they had it, they would have used it too. So 200 years ago, if they had a circular saw, they would have used it.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah,
so if people visit, I want you to leave a message. So if I'm, coming here and I'm coming to Nova Scotia, you want to come to Pictou, what do you leave with them for come to visit you? Quite frankly, like
careful,
yeah,
because you might not go back. So that's it can be a little cheeky because I love Ontario. I miss the Great Lakes.
Yeah,
I do. It's beautiful. I have about 6 beaches within 20 minutes of my house that I can choose from, and they're all different. Wow. And they're mostly unpopulated. No one's on them.
Right.
So if you like ocean and you like beaches and fresh air and happy people and good food and good culture and live music and crafting everything from loggers to knitwear to bread, and you like history, and I don't know, then come to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, and don't forget the McCulloch House.
And the McCulloch House, history.
Please come by because you really have to see it. And down at the bottom of the hill is basically it's like a lab. It's like there's like an education area, and then I think there's crafts and books.
Well, that's our genealogy center. So if you have Scottish history, Scottish roots, it's kind of like our own local trove of research, and so people come literally from all over to shake down their ancestry with.
Oh, and that's where they do it?
That's where they do it.
Oh,
so
really?
people stay for hours. In the winter, we had a younger couple come from Buffalo because she was from New Jersey, but her great grandfather had a grant here in like 1801.
Wow.
And so she came but they're not Pictonians, they're not Nova Scotians, they're Americans, but their ancestry started here. And so people want to figure that out. Like, we've got a lot of resources to kind of understand, figure out, and there's a lot. So Pictou's very proud of its history, and many torchbearers have kind of held that up. So we have a very, very robust trove of kind of anything you can think of: newspaper clippings, books, resources, cemetery records, death records, birth records, school records. Wow. All kinds of stuff.
Well, I know my grandmother, she'd be smiling.
Yeah.
So, and I'm really glad I came. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
And Amos, pleasure to meet you.
You as well.
And
thank you.
Please, the McCulloch House, when you do get the Pictou.